Welcome back to Retro Rebound. In today's video, we're getting into another brand new Nintendo Switch exclusive that recently released, and it does have some heritage on the Nintendo platform. Yes, we're talking about none other than the Pink King of Suck itself, Kirby. I gotta be honest with y'all, Kirby is one of my rare gaming blind spots. While I'm familiar with other Nintendo series like your Pokemon, your Zelda, Kirby hasn't gotten a lot of love from your boy. I gotta be completely transparent about that. My only experience with the Kirby franchise was when Nintendo released the Nintendo Switch Online service. They put a Kirby game on NES. I played that one through all the way and really enjoyed it. I love the music, I love the vibe, the ability changing as you absorb different enemies and you can take what they're doing and become them. Really, my only familiarity with Kirby came through Smash Bros. So I thought that it would be a very interesting perspective for all of you out there watching to be a pretty much non-Kirby fan talking about the recently released Kirby and the Forgotten Land. This trifecta of a post-apocalyptic game, but this sucker who turns into everything, as well as Mario Odyssey vibes all in one. And it caught my attention. So I got it on day one, played it through over the weekend. It's not a super long game, and I'm excited to deliver some thoughts on this game here and now. So if you're into reviews for current Nintendo titles or a lot of throwback content, which is mostly what we do here, consider subscribing. And with that, let's talk about Kirby and the Forgotten Land. So on a story front, you get absorbed by a vortex into this brand new world that is completely desolate of life itself. You see all these abandoned areas that have moss over them. You know that this is a world that has not been inhabited for quite some time. And as someone who is, this is going to be the weirdest crossover in a Kirby conversation, but a huge Fallout fan, post-apocalyptic anything just immediately grabs me. It's kind of sad. I'm like, oh, wait, no one's alive here. Okay, let's see what this is all about. But I think it's that juxtaposition of having a really bubbly hero figure in Kirby and this really sad, empty world that is the Forgotten Land, and putting them together. And there's something that's really cool there. Now, really there's not much to go on with the story because it just takes you to a really interesting location. It has borderline an anime opening. Like, this game, if I could say anything, has a ton of personality. It just does whatever it wants, whenever it wants, brings you wherever, and you're just there on the ride. And it's a blast for that. Really what I wanted to put all my attention to in this review was the gameplay, because that is the experience. The levels, the openness, the freedom, the abilities, the unlockables, the Waddle Dee village. There's a lot there going on the gameplay front, so let's just focus on all of that. So as you're exploring these more open levels, you'll be able to, like in any Kirby game, absorb an enemy and take their abilities. And there are tons of them. But what's great is it's not just what you can do to your enemies, but also how you move about the level. So you'll turn into, as it's been shown across all of Twitter, a car. You'll turn into a stair set, and you'll be able to move around the level and manipulate different elements to reach higher places or go somewhere a little bit quicker. So it's constantly presenting new fun mechanics throughout the entire game. It never gets old because of that, because it's like, who am I going to turn into next? Like, Kirby is literally the Ditto of Nintendo, just this figure that can transform into whatever it wants, and suddenly it's their ability. I love that idea so much because it gives really talented developers a lot of fun ideas to play with. You can freeze enemies, burn them, you can use a sword, you can use a gun. I mean, it's wild what you can turn into here. And what's amazing is because this game's very unlockable based, so as you're going around all of these different levels, you'll have challenges to complete, Waddle Dees to free. As you're doing all of that, certain power-ups are used for certain platforming challenges, where maybe there's a set of boxes that are on fire, and so you have to use the frost upgrade to use your frost breath, cover those boxes with snow effectively, and now the fire's out. Beyond them is a Waddle Dee that you can free. What I love more than anything about this game is, after playing a lot of open world games, very bloated games, back to back to back to back, because I do review a lot of modern releases over on Mr. Matty Plays, is coming into this game, having a sense of openness and exploration, but not so open that I'm aimlessly wandering around. It's very much guided. The camera is borderline fixed as it's sort of shoving you down a certain path. But if you're creative with your abilities, you can find different ways around and new places to explore. And I like that it's much more condensed. It does come with a bit of an old school drawback because there are times that I'd be going through the level and I would be trying to figure out how to find a certain hidden Waddle Dee. And I'd realize, oh, if I use this power here, that's what that thing I saw earlier in the level was. Let me go back and do that. You can't go back. Once the game puts you through a loading screen, you go through a door, there's no going back. The only way you can find that Waddle Dee is by restarting the level and playing through it again. Now, there is the benefit in this game of, for example, going to the Waddle Dee village, picking out whatever power-up you want, and then you can explore any levels with whatever power-ups. So there's that feeling of experimentation that any power-up could be applied to even the first level in the game and what you could unlock there. So there is that cool sense of freedom, but most times the challenges are based around what is available in that level. So there will be times you'll be like 3/4 of the way through a level, find something out that you wish you knew earlier, and you can't just say, well, I'm going to backtrack and explore and just figure out that puzzle that I missed. It's like, no, you got to complete the level and dive back in and go through it all over again. That's where it can feel a bit old school. That's where you can hit a speed bump, not the one that Kirby, absorbs the car and drives over, not that one. But that's where you can hit a bit of a speed bump and you're like, man, I wish this was a little more open so I could just go backwards in the level. That feels very old school. But that's really, hilariously enough, the only true complaint I have about Kirby in the Forgotten Land. Otherwise, it's just a blast to run through because some of these levels are the pure definition of creativity. There are races, boss fights, there's just platforming sections, creative puzzles. But what's amazing is there's a flow. Nothing ever quite stops you. And I found this interesting because as I saw some of the review scores for Kirby in the Forgotten Land, I saw it was scoring really high. And I remember when Kirby Star Allies came out around the launch of the Nintendo Switch, I do recall people complaining, I don't know if it was in mass or not, but people were complaining about the difficulty of that game, that it was way too easy. This game, mind you, it is E10 plus, so it's for most people, is very easy. This is not a nut cruncher, if you will. It's not a gritty experience. There were bosses, for example, that I just ran through. This is not Donkey Kong Country or something where you're going to be retrying sections of the game over and over. Maybe I'm the only one who's bad at Tropical Freeze. I thought that game was tough as nails. But yes, Kirby in the Forgotten Land is a very fun game, but just don't go in expecting a challenge. Now, there are self-imposed challenges, if you will, because you'll find treasure roads throughout this overworld map that you're seeing. And what you'll be able to do is either go to the main levels or these optional 1 to 2 minute sprints of giving you a power-up with a very particular challenge, and when you complete it, you'll get a special stone that you can use at the Waddle Dee village that we'll talk about in a little bit. Inside these treasure challenges are time limits that you can complete them within, and you'll get coins if you complete them within that. I personally never really did. I just kind of like the flow, the gameplay, and generally this game rewards you a ton where you never need to get that high score, but you can push for it. You can also push for collecting all the Waddle Dees in every level. And again, I gotta expose myself here. I'm typically not great at finding everything in these 3D platformers. That's not where my skill set lies as a gamer. I'm more of like a first-person shooter and RPG kind of guy. But even as someone who wasn't that great at them, I was still able to find most of the Waddle Dees. And as you get deeper in the game, some of them become progressively harder to find, to unlock. You will find yourself missing a couple, and that's where doubling back with some of those extra power-ups can be great. But long story short, don't expect a gritty, tough challenge from Kirby, and I don't think many of you out there will. But just to make sure expectations are firmly set in place based off some of the things I read about Kirby Star Allies, this game is not going to challenge you much at all. What it will do, though, is give you a satisfying feeling of progression. As you run through these levels, you collect coins. I mentioned those stones you're going to collect in the treasure roads. What you're going to do is eventually go back to the Waddle Dee village. Now, all of your accomplishments are sort of focused on this particular area. As you collect Waddle Dees, they'll gradually expand the Waddle Dee village, and you'll be able to have different things there, like even a mini game where you're handing out food to all the different Waddle Dees. And it kind of reminded me a little bit of like the Pokemon Stadium mini games where you're going around that turntable picking out all the particular food that people want from you right then and there with the lick-a-tongues. Like, it just reminded me of that in a really strange way. So I kind of had an infatuation with that and went up to the frenzy difficulty for it and played it through a couple of times. That was fun, but it'll expand to other meaningful mechanics like a dojo. It'll expand to a delivery service where you could get codes and get items in the game. Kirby gets his own place to stay in. It's really cool how all of that works. There's a weapon shop in there, and you can now, with all those things you collected, the coins, the stones, go in there and upgrade these abilities. And these upgraded abilities do a variety of different things, like the gun ability will, for example, take out 2 guns, and now you'll shoot a little bit quicker, and your charge shot is better. There's also the sword ability, which turns into a huge greatsword like your Guts from Berserk, and you're just heaving this thing around. I'm like, isn't this an E10 Plus game? What's going on here? Kirby's just doing whatever the heck he wants, and I'm all here for it. But that's where all of your progression sort of comes to light here. Why you're collecting everything, why you're doing the bonus challenges, why you're getting all these coins, because you'll spend them here in this little hub town, if you will. And it's not going to blow your mind, but as it gradually expands more and more, there was a feeling to me of, oh, there's more. Oh, wow, there's more. Okay, there's more. Like, I got to the 4th biome, I'm like, oh, there's even more here. This is great. Again, it's a fun game. I know we're in a day and age where games are absolutely art. In its own way, Kirby is art. But with that, we get lost in the heavy narratives, the gut-wrenching, character-driven stories, and that stuff is awesome. We just reviewed Triangle Strategy a number of weeks ago, so don't get me wrong, we're still all about that. But sometimes a nice palate cleanser is in order, and Kirby really was exactly that for me, because as I'm running through these beautiful levels, I'm just having a good time, man. Like, it's just a great time. There is also co-op play in this game. I didn't get to mess around with it much, but I just want to make sure people knew, if they looked up like on Co-Optimus or something like that, that this is not online co-op. It is just local co-op. So don't go in expecting that you're going to be able to play online with a buddy or something like that. But perhaps the biggest exposure of myself that could revoke my gamer card is there are items in this game, I gotta say it, that I saw in Smash Bros, the original one on the N64, one of my favorite games ever. I remember like the tomato with the M on it and going, oh, that's from Kirby. Like, I didn't know this was like a lesson in gaming for me at the same time. Like, so many items I thought I would associate with Smash Bros. I'm like, oh my God, it was from Kirby this whole time. It wasn't even an original Smash Bros. Item. And that tomato or whatever it is was that moment of, oh my God, I'm not the gamer I thought I was. So that was also a really cool moment for me as a brand new Kirby fan. Again, I only played the NES one, and it had been a number of years now where I don't remember much about it. It was just like a fun romp, kind of like this is. But stuff like the items didn't stick with me, where now seeing it here in a brand new Nintendo Switch game, I'm like, oh, so this is where Smash got some of its ideas from. Interesting. It made me appreciate Kirby more, because as a huge Smash Bros. Fan, I realized the contributions this series also brought to the franchise, right? We always talk about Mario, Zelda, Pokemon. Like, those are the real significant ones. But Kirby really brought some of the item structure in that was really important in Smash Bros. And most of them that I remember came from Kirby. So that was also just a neat personal moment as, again, kind of a non-fan, if you will. But overall, I had a great time. This game definitely surprised me because I expected to enjoy it, but I didn't expect to walk away with really one critique, which was just not being able to go backwards in a level. Otherwise, even the music, by the way, holy smokes, I didn't even shout this out. The music in this game, it's not Trails level, okay? So let's use that as the gauge right now. We've talked a lot about music on this channel and how I mentioned Trails is like GOAT status. Look, it's not there, but some of these levels are oddly peaceful. Like, you're running through and you're going around a bunch of like tsunami swirling tanks, and there's a lot of things happening. You'll just hear like a light little beat playing in the background. I'm like, this is an experience that very much is Kirby, right? Kirby can be whatever it wants, just like this game does whatever it wants. It goes to an amusement park, to a snow biome, and then you're listening to like rock. All of a sudden you're fighting a tree boss. It's a wild game, but it's a lot of fun. It's not long really at all. That's the one thing you should know going in is, you know, we're talking about a $60 game, and like I usually go to Walmart for a lot of my new pickups because they'll typically discount it at $10, so even a new release is $50. That was the case when I got Triangle Strategy, but for some reason Kirby was not. So I don't know what was going on there. But this is something that you should consider. Bang for your buck. There is replayability here going through these levels, but know that it's not like an Elden Ring. Like, you're going to be really wringing 100+ hours out of the game. I guess you could if you keep replaying it, technically. But this is a game you can put away pretty fast, like 10-ish hours, but quality over quantity, right? Like, I'd take 10 quality hours, as many say, over like 50 wasted hours. So time is a very important factor here. So I really liked Kirby, and I just want to share my thoughts on it. So have you picked up Kirby in the Forgotten Land? Let me know in the comments down below. Other than that, I'm looking forward to seeing your thoughts on Kirby in the Forgotten Land. Take great care of yourselves, and I'll see you in the next Retro Rebound. Peace out.